What would you do if you were filling up your gas tank and suddenly found yourself surrounded by a gang of ruthless outlaw bikers looking for trouble? That's exactly what happened to Anna Carter, a former combat nurse who served 3 tours in Iraq, when the notorious Crimson Vipers decided her quiet Texas town would be their next target. But these bikers underestimated Anna, whose calm confidence and hidden military training would soon turn their intimidation tactics back on themselves in a dramatic standoff at a rural gas station. You won't believe how Anna and her neighbors fought back using bravery, unity, and careful planning, turning a small town into a fortress overnight. Want to know how the Crimson Vipers reacted when they realized they'd chosen the wrong place to terrorize? Listen until the end. You won't regret it. If you love powerful stories about communities standing strong, please hit that subscribe button to support our channel and follow more amazing stories. And don't forget to share your thoughts below. What would you have done in Anna's shoes? The air in Clayton Bend was thick with the heat of a Texas summer, the sky hazy with dust that drifted lazily across the rural highways, converging outside the small town. It was the kind of day when sweat clung to skin after just a minute in the sun, and the asphalt shimmered in the distance like a mirage. Anna Carter stood at a creaky fuel pump outside Buck Johnson's gas station, methodically filling the tank of her battered green Chevy pickup. Anna's dark hair was pulled tight into a ponytail, revealing a face that wore its experience plainly. A faint scar curved along her temple, a reminder of the life she'd led before coming to Clayton Bend, where she served as a combat nurse in Iraq for 3 tours. She had arrived in town a few months ago, keeping a low profile, but people noticed her anyway. There was something in the way she moved, the way she constantly scanned her surroundings, that spoke of a practiced vigilance. Inside the station, Buck Johnson watched her through dusty windows while leaning over his ancient countertop. A Korean War veteran himself, Buck saw in Anna's eyes the same quiet toughness he recognized from his own years overseas. She paid in cash, always polite but rarely chatty, and he respected her preference for distance. The day felt ordinary enough. Country music crackled over an old radio, and a slow ceiling fan did its feeble best to push the heat around the small store. Ethan Ross, Buck's teenage nephew and part-time attendant, was stocking shelves of motor oil in a corner. Not much happened in Clayton Bend on most days, and if it weren't for the occasional passing trucker, Buck probably wouldn't have kept the place open. But the lull soon shattered when the low rumble of distant motorcycles cut through the peaceful monotony. The sound grew steadily louder, a wave of mechanical growls that made Ethan glance up anxiously. Anna noticed it too, her grip on the gas pump tightening just a fraction. The skill set she acquired on grim desert roads told her to trust that first prickle of warning. Suddenly, a group of motorcycles roared into the station's lot. 7 riders in total, each wearing a leather vest emblazoned with a crimson serpent coiled in an attacking posture. Everyone in the county had heard of them. The Crimson Vipers, an outlaw biker club rumored to be expanding its reach through intimidation and violence. Their leader, Talon Gray, a tall man with thick, tattooed arms, dismounted first. He carried himself with the arrogant confidence of someone who expected the world to step aside whenever he appeared. The other bikers spread out around the gas station. They were a rough-looking crew, all harsh laughter and swagger. One of them, a wiry man with a rattlesnake tattoo snaking up his neck, hooked his thumbs in his belt loops and smirked at Anna. Inside the store, Buck's hand drifted beneath the counter, where a shotgun lay hidden. Ethan swallowed hard, his eyes flicking between his uncle and the growing tension outside. Anna sensed movement behind her. She finished topping off her tank and calmly turned to find Talon standing closer than most strangers dared. He wore a crooked grin that made it clear he planned to intimidate. "Awful hot day, don't you think?" he drawled, letting his gaze linger on her. "Pretty thing like you ought to be careful out here on the roads. Never know what kind of trouble you might run into." Anna's eyes flicked over to the other bikers, who had begun prowling around her pickup, leaving greasy fingerprints on its faded paint. She considered her next words carefully. In a war zone, a single sentence could escalate or diffuse a crisis. "I'm doing just fine," she replied levelly, meeting Talon's gaze without blinking. He seemed amused that she hadn't taken a step back or showed fear. "Yeah? Well, my boys and I are in a hurry, and I'd hate to see you get in our way. Maybe you should move that truck somewhere else before we have an issue." Her cheeks remained impassive. There was no fear in her eyes, only calculated awareness. "I'm done filling up," she answered, her tone still polite but lacking any note of submission. Talon studied her for a moment longer, then laughed. Not the friendly sort of laugh, but something colder. "All right, then." He flicked his gaze over to the station's windows, noticing Buck's silhouette inside. "Say, you think the old man in there is ready to pay his tab?" The question bristled with threat. Rumor had it that some local businesses were being coerced into paying protection fees to the Crimson Vipers. A few had given in. Others had refused and suffered break-ins, vandalism, or worse. Anna's spine went rigid. She remembered battered Iraqi villages menaced by local militias and how sometimes all it took was one act of defiance to rally people, but she also knew how quickly things could escalate. "I doubt Buck is interested in that kind of arrangement," she said quietly. Talon raised an eyebrow, smirking again. "You talk pretty big, but you might not know how things work around here. We're in control. We make the rules." Inside the station, Buck tensed. Anna noticed the way the biker's stances shifted, forming a loose circle meant to box her in. Talon advanced half a step, leaning into her personal space. "Better watch that mouth of your," he said, voice dripping menace. "It'd be a shame if something happened to you before you can pay for your gas." Anna recalled the shriek of mortar shells in the Iraqi desert, the whine of medevac choppers overhead. She'd faced far worse than a bully in a vest. Calmly, she locked eyes with Talon. "I've paid," she replied, "and if you're smart, you'll step back now." For a flicker of a moment, Talon saw something in her gaze that unsettled him. His brow furrowed. He was used to people either cowering or fighting blindly. This woman stood steady, neither flinching nor provoking. It was unsettling enough that he paused. A sudden flash of red-blue lights lit the edge of the station's lot. Deputy Lisa Alvarez's cruiser pulled in, and she stepped out, hand resting on her holster. "Evening, folks. Everything all right here?" Anna broke eye contact with Talon to glance at the deputy. Talon grimaced. Dealing with law enforcement, even in a small place like Clayton Bend, wasn't part of his plan. He shook his head, feigning innocence. "No problem here, officer. My friends and I were just leaving." With that, he motioned to his crew, who swung back onto their bikes. Engines revved, and the Crimson Vipers tore away in a swirl of dust. Anna didn't move until the last engine had faded into the distance. She exhaled slowly, feeling her adrenaline subside. Deputy Alvarez approached, taking in the scene. Buck stepped outside, shotgun still hidden behind the door. Ethan peeked over Buck's shoulder. "You okay?" the deputy asked Anna, scanning her face for any sign of distress. Anna nodded. "Yes, I'm fine." "It could." Buck studied the diminishing cloud of dust on the horizon. "They'll be back," he muttered. "They never let up if they think you owe them." Deputy Alvarez agreed. "We've had more run-ins with them lately. Vandalism, theft, protection fees. They're expanding. We're short-staffed, so it's getting out of hand." Anna looked at Buck, then at the deputy. Her gaze shifted to Ethan, who was trying to appear calm despite the tension. A knot formed in her stomach. She'd come here for peace, to escape the horrors she'd seen overseas. Yet it seemed that trouble was brewing in Clayton Bend as well. Deputy Alvarez gave them a gentle nod. "I'll file a report. Anna, you might want to stay cautious. And Buck, you might consider adding more security. I don't like it, but these guys are persistent." When the deputy left, Buck finally relaxed his stance. "I owe you my thanks," he said quietly, directing his words to Anna. "You kept them talking, kept them from messing up my station." Anna pressed her lips together in a thin smile. "Just glad nobody got hurt." She glanced around the lot, half expecting the bikers to reappear. "But you're right, Buck. They'll come back." Ethan stared at Anna with a mixture of awe and anxiety. "What do we do when they do?" Anna paused, memories of conflict flickering in her mind. "We prepare." She didn't elaborate further, but the resolve in her voice said enough. She'd once coordinated medevac teams under mortar fire, orchestrating life-saving missions in chaos. Maybe now, she thought, she could use those skills to help protect a small Texas town. That night, the folks of Clayton Bend, especially those who had witnessed the standoff at Buck's gas station, felt the undercurrent of change. Some locked their doors, double-checking the bolts. Others stayed up with lights on, scanning the streets. And Anna Carter, lying on her modest cot in a small rental home at the edge of town, couldn't shake the certainty that she was already at war, just a different kind than she'd faced before. Her last waking thought was of Talon's sneer. We make the rules. Anna had seen men like him in every conflict zone, men who preyed on vulnerability, who built their power on fear, but she also knew fear could be dismantled one deliberate step at a time. Tomorrow, she decided she would start taking those steps. Within days, news of the standoff at Buck Johnson's gas station circulated through Clayton Bend. Small towns have a way of passing stories around, from the grocery aisle to the farm supply store, from the post office to the local cafe. The tale grew in the telling. Some said Anna Carter had single-handedly knocked Talon Gray off his bike. Others insisted she kept an entire gang at bay with just a cold stare. The truth was simpler, but no less concerning. The Crimson Vipers had tried to assert their dominance, and Anna's refusal to be cowed had shown them the town wouldn't roll over easily. Yet from everything Anna heard around town, intimidation by the Vipers was on the rise. Windows smashed at a hardware shop, petty theft at the auto garage, threatening graffiti on the local diner. After her shift at the nearby medical clinic, where she'd been working part-time since her arrival, Anna met with Buck, Deputy Alvarez, and a handful of others at the back corner of the gas station. A makeshift town council of sorts had formed, consisting of people who refused to sit idle while criminals bullied them. Deputy Alvarez spread a county map on the hood of her cruiser. They've hit half a dozen businesses in the past week. Last night, they threw bricks through the front windows of the feed store. And we got a tip that a new group of Vipers just rode in from out of state. A hushed groan passed among the gathered. Buck crossed his arms. So they're reinforcing. Or stepping up their intimidation, Anna said. She scanned the map, marking known incidents. They did the same back in Iraq, though obviously different context. But the pattern is similar. Build fear one attack at a time, spread resources thin, keep the community off balance. A wiry man in grease-stained overalls, David Robinson, owned the local auto shop. He nodded gravely. My cousin said a couple of these guys threatened him on the highway, rode too close, forced him to swerve. They want folks to know they own the roads. That's how it starts, Deputy Alvarez confirmed. We're short-handed. The county promised backup, but they're dealing with their own problems. We might not see reinforcements for weeks. Anna folded her arms over her chest. Her posture looked more like a soldier's than a nurse's. Then we do it ourselves. Organized, safe, and legal. We coordinate watchers, cameras, volunteer patrols. We set up a phone tree or a radio net so we can respond quickly to any incident. Some people exchanged uncertain glances. A few thought the idea was too ambitious for a dusty little town. But Buck piped up, his voice firm with memory. Back in my war days, we'd set up perimeter checks, watch rotations. Same principle, different place. We just need a plan. Ethan Ross, who had been standing quietly, raised his hand awkwardly. I can handle tech stuff. My buddy's got a few security cameras we can place around, and I know a guy who can set up a local radio frequency. Anna gave him a small smile. Perfect. We'll start there. Eyes and communication are our first defenses. They spent the evening charting out who would cover which part of town, agreeing on simple signals for emergencies. David offered to help fix up old cars and trucks for patrolling. Another resident, Carmen Lopez, a local teacher, volunteered the high school's vantage point for overseeing the main street. Buck planned to install an extra row of floodlights around his station, where it all began. Not everyone has to fight, Anna reassured them, but everyone can watch. Everyone can be part of the solution. Deputy Alvarez pointed at the map. We'll keep it legal. We're not forming a vigilante squad, just coordinated neighborhood watch on steroids. David snorted. Still likely to make the Vipers mad. Anna nodded. Yes, but they're already mad. We need to show them intimidation won't work. If we hunker down and hide, they win by default. The next morning, Clayton Bend hummed with cautious but determined energy. David recruited volunteers to help install cameras on the corners of storefronts. Buck arranged for extra lighting at the station, rigging a set of bright flood lamps that would expose every shadow after dark. Carmen Lopez organized a meeting at the high school, explaining to the teenagers, some of whom had already been harassed by bikers, how to alert neighbors if they spotted unusual activity. Anna spent her time between the clinic and the new watch network, teaching simple first aid techniques to residents who might need them. She also quietly assessed each location's vulnerabilities. Years of triage under gunfire had honed her skill at prioritizing resources. One corner of town needed better visibility. Another stretch of road required more watchers at dusk. Ethan, true to his word, set up a basic radio station in a spare back room at Buck's store. Wires snaked along the walls, and an old CB radio system crackled to life. Word spread that folks could tune in for updates or call in emergencies. "She's turned the whole town into a fortress," Deputy Alvarez murmured to Buck one afternoon as they watched Anna drilling a volunteer group on radio protocols. The deputy's tone was half impressed, half awed. Buck nodded, wiping sweat from his brow. "I'd say we're forming something even stronger than a fortress: community, trust." But in the midst of this rapid organization, signs of the Crimson Vipers appeared more frequently. A few cameras were smashed overnight. Spray-painted threats turned up on walls. "We rule. Back down." People found nails sprinkled on their driveways in the morning. A well-known rancher had his barn doors vandalized, though no livestock was hurt. Each provocation tested the newly formed network. Anna's message to the watchers remained consistent: document everything, stay calm, don't engage alone. They used cell phones to photograph the damage, filed police reports, and updated the central log that Ethan kept near his radio set. Anna and Buck had a hunch that these acts were prelude to something bigger, a major demonstration of Viper power. They alerted Deputy Alvarez, who was already swamped, trying to respond to multiple petty crimes in scattered corners of the county. One evening, Anna sat in the gas station's back office, flipping through pages of notes they'd compiled. License plates, descriptions of the bikers, times and dates of sightings. She had a notepad filled with circles and arrows, forming patterns of the Viper's movements. Buck joined her, setting down 2 mugs of coffee. "Look at these lines," she said, pointing to repeated sightings on the edges of town. "They're circling, seeing where we're strong, where we're weak. It's almost like they're searching for a blind spot." Buck took a sip of coffee. "They want to find somewhere they can strike fast, scare people, then get out. Typical strong-arm stuff." Anna tapped the page. "My worry is that if they try something bigger, like a direct assault on multiple businesses at once, our watch network might be stretched thin." Buck patted her shoulder gently. "We're doing the best we can. You've whipped the town into shape better than I could have ever dreamed. If they do come, we'll hold them off until the county can get more deputies here." Outside, the neon glow of the station sign flickered. Ethan's voice filtered in from the radio room, relaying to a volunteer that all was quiet at the moment. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked, and the chirp of cicadas underlined the warm Texas night. Anna took a deep breath. There was a part of her that ached at the thought of diving back into conflict. She'd spent years patching wounds, hearing the crackle of gunfire, feeling the tremor of explosions in deserts half a world away. She'd come to Clayton Bend hoping for peace, yet here she was again, planning, coordinating, bracing for a fight. And yet she couldn't walk away. Something about the way the townspeople had rallied made her remember why she'd gone into nursing in the first place: to protect lives and restore hope, no matter how dire the circumstances. That hope would soon be tested. 2 nights later, around midnight, the radio crackled with tension. "Ethan, to all watchers, multiple motorcycle lights on Highway 10, heading north, about a dozen or more. They're moving fast." Anna, half dozing in her small rental home, snapped awake at the sound of her special alert radio. She quickly threw on jeans and boots, then rushed outside. The drive to Buck's station was all swirling dust and adrenaline. In the distance, she could see the glare of headlights, a cluster of them, like approaching stars on the horizon. When she arrived, the station's floodlights illuminated a tense scene. Buck stood by the pumps, shotgun in hand but pointed at the ground. Deputy Alvarez's cruiser was parked with lights on, but no siren. A handful of locals lingered near their trucks, arms folded, eyes fixed on the direction of the oncoming bikes. Ethan's voice came again. "They're almost here, counting 14 bikes, possibly more behind them." Anna hopped out of her pickup. Deputy Alvarez strode over. "They're spreading out," the deputy reported. "A couple took the side road near the diner. Others are continuing toward us. No sign of stopping. We might have ourselves a confrontation. Everyone knows their role? Anna asked quickly. The deputy nodded. Spread out, record everything. Don't start fights. The watchers have cameras. We'll call in backup, but it's at least a half hour out. Before Anna could respond, the thunder of engines announced the Viper's arrival. Talon Gray led the procession, flanked by two particularly mean-looking bikers Anna hadn't seen before. Reinforcements, no doubt. Their machines rolled into the station's lot, headlights cutting harsh lines across the darkness. Talon dismounted, scanning the assembly of townspeople. He fixed his gaze on Anna with recognition and a clear desire for payback. Well, if it ain't the heroic nurse, he said, voice carrying an edge. Heard you've been stirring up quite a fuss. Anna squared her shoulders. Heard you've been making trouble all over town. Talon chuckled, though the sound held no warmth. You people don't learn. This is our turf now. All those cameras and watchers of yours won't stop us. A few of the bikers circled around, one revving his engine to an ear-splitting roar. Another dismounted to tip over a display rack of windshield fluid. Bottles scattered, liquid spreading across the pavement. Deputy Alvarez spoke up, hand near her holster. That's enough. You're trespassing and causing property damage. Talon flicked a glance at her. Oh, we'll cause more than that if you don't back off. Where's that so-called protection money, huh? He looked pointedly at Buck. You owe us for operating in our territory. Buck gritted his teeth. Not paying you a dime. Talon exhaled with exaggerated patience. Then maybe I gotta make an example out of your station. Anna took a step forward, placing herself between Talon and Buck. Her expression was calm, but the tension in her body spoke volumes. Back away, she said softly. Before you make a mistake you can't undo. You threatening me, nurse? Talon snarled, stepping close enough for Anna to smell the cigarette stench on his breath. I'm telling you that nobody here will roll over, Anna said. And every bit of what happens tonight is getting recorded. Attacking civilians gets you a one-way ticket to a federal investigation. Before Talon could retort, another biker, this one with a shaved head and an iron jaw, pulled out a metal chain, slapping it threateningly against his palm. We don't need to talk. Let's break 'em. The radio on Deputy Alvarez's belt crackled. All watchers, we have bikers at the diner, throwing bricks at windows. A second voice joined. They're at the hardware store too, kicking in the door. Anna realized in a flash what was happening. A coordinated strike across multiple spots in town. This was exactly what she'd feared. She glanced around at the watchers. Stay calm, follow the plan. Document. We'll dispatch teams to help. She pointed at a group of locals. Go to the diner. Deputy, can you cover the hardware store? Talon grinned viciously. You're spread too thin, aren't you? That's how it goes when you poke the bear. But Anna's eyes sparked with determination. We'll see about that. The deputy hurried off with 2 trucks full of volunteers. Another pickup roared away, headed for the diner. Buck stayed behind with a small contingent to guard the gas station, cameras rolling. Anna braced herself, the hair on her arms standing on end from the tension. Talon and his men revved their engines, swirling around the station's perimeter like sharks circling a wounded whale. They were testing the watchers, waiting for an opening. The big biker with the chain advanced, eyes gleaming with malice. Anna's heart thumped, but her voice stayed steady. Leave now, Talon. This is your last chance. Talon revved his bike in response. The last chance is yours. Just then, the night exploded with the sound of smashing glass and distant shouts carried through the radio waves. The Crimson Vipers were making their move, scattering across Clayton Bend with chaos in mind. Anna pressed the transmit button on her radio and spoke with the clarity of a seasoned battlefield nurse. All watchers, hold positions, document, do not engage unless in immediate danger. Wait for backup. At the station, tension coalesced into a showdown. Talon dismounted again, flicking his gaze at Anna. Beneath the harsh glare of the floodlights, everyone stood still for a moment that felt like an eternity, the summer heat weighing on them. A single wrong move could spark violence. Anna wondered if all their preparations were enough. They'd strengthened the town's sense of unity, set up communications, and built watcher stations. But the Vipers had numbers and the element of intimidation. But as she peered around, she saw something else. Resolute faces of neighbors, each armed with a camera or a phone, quietly refusing to flinch. They'd come a long way from the time when people locked themselves indoors at the first sign of trouble. This is our town, Anna thought, and we're not giving it up. The clamor of destruction echoed across Clayton Bend as the Crimson Vipers executed their strike. Windows at the diner were shattered, the hardware store's front door splintered, and reports of vandalism poured in from the outskirts, barns spray-painted, fences ripped down. It was a full-scale attempt to break the town's morale. But just as quickly, the Watch Network responded. While Deputy Alvarez sped to the hardware store, Buck's station remained a flashpoint. Talon Gray and his core group hovered there, testing boundaries. Anna Carter held her ground. Under the stark glow of floodlights, the tension escalated. The big biker with the chain, known among the Vipers as Crusher, started swinging it in a slow arc, inching closer to Anna. She stood ready, mind already sorting through possibilities. If he attacks, slip aside, go for the wrist, disarm. It was no different from the split-second decisions she'd made in war zones, except now it was to protect a gas station rather than a field hospital. Talon revved his bike again, a cruel grin twisting his features. "Where's your big talk now, nurse? Let's see you handle this." In a flash, Crusher lashed out. Anna sidestepped, grabbed his swinging arm at the elbow, and shoved it upward at an angle that sent a bolt of pain shooting through his shoulder. The chain slipped from his grip, clattering onto the concrete. Crusher cursed, staggering back, shock plain on his face. He wasn't used to encountering real resistance, let alone from a woman whose quiet demeanor belied lethal training. Some of the other Vipers hesitated, realizing that brute force might not be as easy as they'd assumed. Fury twisted Talon's expression. He glared at Anna as if personally offended by her skill. "You're gonna pay for that." Almost as if on cue, a fresh roar of engines announced the arrival of more Vipers. They swarmed around the station, but their formation quickly faltered as they noticed multiple cameras capturing every angle. Kevin Landry, a local farmer who had become an unlikely volunteer, stood on the station's roof with a high-resolution camera, unwavering in the face of roaring bikes. Meanwhile, Buck, flanked by a group of neighbors, aimed their own cell phones and handheld cameras at the bikers. The watchers were everywhere. For every bit of property damage or assault, the evidence would be irrefutable. "You think those cameras scare us?" one of the bikers spat. Anna wiped sweat from her brow. "They should. You're committing multiple felonies on camera. There's nowhere to hide once the footage is in the hands of the feds." At that moment, a series of urgent calls poured in through the radio. "Diner watchers. We've forced 4 of them to leave. Caught everything on video. Deputy Alvarez at the hardware store. 2 bikes fled, but we got their plates. Send backup for repairs." Carmen at the high school. "They tried to throw a Molotov, but we doused it immediately. Cameras got every face." Talon's scowl deepened. The coordinated response was clearly not what he'd counted on. His eyes flicked around, calculating. Even if he and his men caused damage here, the rest of the town was already containing the chaos. Worse, the Watchers had turned the entire place into a bright stage where every criminal act was recorded. Crusher clutched his sore arm, muttering curses. "They're humiliating us." Anna took a careful step forward, her voice low enough that only Talon and the immediate bikers could hear. "Leave while you can. You won't get a better offer. All you'll do is rack up charges that'll follow you forever." Talon's pride warred with common sense. He was a man who ruled by fear, but what happens when fear no longer works? All around him, the townspeople looked on, not with terror, but with grim determination. From the corner of her eye, Anna spotted the flashing lights of approaching law enforcement vehicles. The county sheriff's deputies, summoned by the Watch Network's calls. Their arrival would only tighten the noose around the Vipers. "Damn you!" Talon growled, revving his engine. He shouted to his men, "Pull out!" A few loyalists hesitated, but the reality was clear. Staying meant arrest and certain charges, possibly serious federal attention. Crusher shot Anna a murderous glare, but followed Talon's lead. One by one, the bikes roared away, retreating into the Texas night. In the wake of their departure, a hush fell over Buck's station. Only the hum of the floodlights and the faint crackle of the radio disturbed the silence. Several neighbors emerged from cover, tension fading into palpable relief. "They're gone," Buck said softly, lowering his shotgun. Anna turned, scanning the horizon where the red taillights of the motorcycles vanished. For now, she murmured. She knew men like Talon Gray rarely surrendered so quickly, but the combined forces of unity, documentation, and the looming presence of law enforcement had dealt a blow to the Viper's confidence. Deputy Alvarez returned in her cruiser, 2 county patrol cars behind her. We caught a few of them messing around the hardware store and diner. The rest fled. You okay here? Anna nodded. No serious injuries. Some property damage. We got it all on camera. One of the county deputies whistled upon seeing the array of recording devices. Looks like you'll have a solid case to press charges. These guys bit off more than they could chew. As the night stretched on, volunteers fanned out to assess damage. The diner's windows lay in shards, and graffiti covered the hardware store's facade. A handful of fences on the outskirts had been kicked down, and some barns had scorched walls from failed attempts at arson. Yet it wasn't the devastation the Vipers had hoped for. Everywhere they struck, watchers had responded swiftly, preventing the worst. In the following days, Clayton Bend worked tirelessly to clean up. From sunrise to sunset, people hammered nails, replaced glass, repainted walls. It wasn't done with complaint, but with a sense of solidarity, neighbors helping neighbors. The county sheriff visited in person, collecting footage and statements. Armed with the Watch Network's meticulous documentation, law enforcement made arrests not just locally, but in neighboring counties where the Vipers had also been active. Each clip, each photo, each note of a license plate was another nail in the gang's coffin. For Anna, watching the town rally to rebuild after the coordinated strike was like seeing an army of volunteers come together on a humanitarian mission. Shop owners who barely spoke to each other weeks ago were now sharing tools and resources. High school students pitched in, clearing debris under the guidance of Carmen Lopez. People brought food to workers, offered spare rooms for anyone whose home was damaged, and wrote letters to local authorities demanding continued support. Even Buck's once quiet gas station turned into a hub of activity, locals arriving to get updates, share leads, or just lend a hand. Ethan Ross managed the radio communications like a pro, logging calls and ensuring every shift had coverage. By the end of the week, a sense of cautious optimism prevailed. The Crimson Vipers were still out there, but they'd suffered a major defeat. Several members faced charges of extortion, vandalism, and assault. Word spread that Talon Gray had lost favor with some of his own men for leading them into a fiasco where they'd been outmaneuvered by some nurse and a bunch of townsfolk. Deputy Alvarez, though busy with endless paperwork, found time to meet Anna at the clinic, where Anna had resumed her medical duties. County wants to commend you for setting up that watch network, the deputy said, offering a grateful smile. And I'd like to personally thank you. A small department like mine can't handle a gang of that size alone. Anna lowered her gaze, feeling a mixture of satisfaction and discomfort at the praise. I just showed folks how to work together. They did the hard part. Before long, local newspapers picked up the story. Clayton Bend unites against outlaw gang. Reports lauded the quiet nurse with military experience who had galvanized the town. Anna's face sometimes appeared in grainy photos, always standing a bit off to the side, as if hoping not to be noticed. When it became clear that the immediate threat had subsided, the Watch Network didn't dissolve. Instead, it shifted to a permanent, citizen-led organization. They held monthly meetings discussing not only security but also ways to improve life in Clayton Bend. Road repairs, community events, fundraising for local charities. I guess trouble has a way of bringing people closer, Buck mused one evening as he and Anna sat on a bench outside the station, watching the sunset. Anna offered a contemplative nod. In Iraq, I saw communities unite under the worst circumstances. Sometimes that bond became their most powerful weapon against chaos. Buck studied her profile. You never really said why you came here, Anna. She shrugged lightly, eyes on the horizon. Looking for a place to breathe. After my tours, I just wanted somewhere quiet. She let out a soft chuckle. Didn't expect I'd end up teaching folks how to counter gang tactics. Buck gave a wry grin. We needed it. And you. We might have been strong folks, but you helped us see we could stand together. Their conversation trailed into comfortable silence. The wide Texas sky flared with orange and red hues. After a while, a few motorcycles rumbled by on the distant highway, neither slowing nor threatening, just passing travelers. Anna couldn't help the slight twinge of tension in her shoulders, but it eased when the bikers didn't so much as glance at the station. That night, Clayton Bend felt safer than it had in months. People still locked their doors, but they slept knowing they weren't alone. If trouble came knocking again, a phone call or radio message would bring neighbors in minutes. A week later, a handful of Crimson Vipers attempted to sneak back into town under cover of darkness, maybe to settle a score or salvage their reputation. Alert watchers spotted them near the deserted train depot, and a swift flash of phone calls brought half a dozen vehicles out to the site, cameras rolling. The bikers turned and fled without further drama. The next morning, the story buzzed around, fueling the sense that the Vipers no longer held power over Clayton Bend. The once menacing gang had been exposed, every face captured, every act documented. Their intimidation fizzled against a populace united. In time, the swarm of headlines dwindled and life settled into a new normal. The local cafe stayed open late for folks to chat and compare stories. Roads got fixed faster with volunteer crews, and the monthly watch meetings transformed into broader community gatherings. Anna continued her work at the clinic, mending sprained ankles and giving toddlers their vaccinations. She also coached a small group in advanced first aid, just in case. Although the bruises and nightmares from her combat days still haunted her at times, she found solace in the daily rhythms of a town that was healing its own wounds. On the one-year anniversary of the fateful showdown at Buck Johnson's gas station, the people of Clayton Bend organized a neighborhood potluck right there in the parking lot. Tables overflowed with casseroles, barbecued ribs, cornbread, and homemade pies. Children played tag around the pumps. A local band strummed cheerful tunes on guitars. Deputy Alvarez, now promoted to a higher rank within the county, gave a short speech praising the collective courage of the town. Buck tried to add a few words, but choked up when he recalled how they'd once been fearful and disorganized, saved only by the timely intervention of a combat nurse who'd quietly shown them how to stand strong. When Anna's turn to speak came, she stepped up with a shy smile. The crowd applauded in a warm, genuine way, reminding her of the moment she'd been welcomed into the field hospital staff years ago, back when she was still green. "All of you fought for your home," she told them. "I might have shared a few strategies, but it's your unity that protected Clayton Bend. Don't forget that." They cheered, and in that moment Anna felt a wave of gratitude. She had come here to escape the ghosts of war, only to find a new purpose, showing a town that it didn't need to bow to threats or violence. As dusk fell, candles and fairy lights illuminated the gathering. Someone joked about the night a nurse took down a biker gang, and laughter rippled through the crowd. Anna laughed along with them, but she knew it wasn't about her alone. It was about every farmhand, shopkeeper, mechanic, teacher, deputy, and teenager who had refused to let fear rule their lives. Later, as she and Buck tidied up trash around the station, she caught sight of a faint scar on her forearm, another relic from Iraq. Once those scars had reminded her of all she'd lost. Now in Clayton Bend, they reminded her of what could be gained when people faced danger together. She pressed a palm to her forearm thoughtfully. "I'm staying put," she announced to Buck in a near whisper. Buck glanced up, brow raised. "Here, you mean?" Anna nodded. "This town might not have been what I planned, but it's home now." They shared a look of quiet understanding. Overhead, stars flickered in the vast Texas sky, and the hum of crickets filled the warm night air. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, as life always does. But in Clayton Bend, those challenges would be met by an unbreakable community, shaped by a lesson that would forever define them. In the end, Anna Carter didn't just save her town. She taught an entire community the power of standing together against intimidation. What started as a terrifying confrontation became a transformative moment for Clayton Bend, uniting neighbors into friends and ordinary people into heroes. The Crimson Vipers learned a hard lesson that day. Fear might work temporarily, but courage and unity will always prevail in the long run. Anna found her place, not just as a protector, but as part of a true home, surrounded by people who now saw her as family. It's a powerful reminder for us all. No threat is too big when faced together, and even the smallest community can become an unbreakable fortress. What did you think about Anna's journey from combat nurse to community hero? Have you ever experienced a situation where unity defeated intimidation? Please leave your comments and thoughts below. We love hearing from you.